continuing on with the newscast now, we're going to talk about some immigration stuff that's happened. And it's going to be a big hot button issue, for Republicans at least, going into the midterms, because it's one of the things that they can needle Democrats on pretty effectively. Even if you think immigration should be a thing that should be more open, we can talk about some of the failures that happen in that. So let's talk about it. As we approach the midterm elections, we'll be covering some of the issues that will be featured in the candidates' campaign ads. We are going beyond the headlines for this, because there's where the facts live and the clickbait dies. This week, we're talking about immigration. Are the borders open? Have the immigration numbers gone sky high under Biden? Let's get into it. So according to an analysis done by CBS News, in some ways, the migration flows across the US-Mexican border during the Biden administration are unprecedented. Arrests of individuals who cross the US southern border illegally have reached all-time highs. Arrivals of migrants from certain countries, including Cuba and Venezuela, have set new records. But by other measurements, including overall illegal entry, the latest migration wave is not unprecedented. Despite recent record levels of migration arrest, there were more unlawful entries in the mid and early 2000s. An unusual high rate of repeat crossings during the coronavirus pandemic has also inflated border arrest tallies. Here are the facts about arrivals of migrants along the US-Mexican border during the Biden administration. In fiscal year of 2021, and we say fiscal year because that's October to October, so October 1st of 2021 to October 1st of 2022, which includes Mr. Biden's 8 full months in office, Border Patrol recorded 1.66 million arrests along the southern border, surpassing the previous all-time high of 1.64 million arrests set in 2000. Customs and Border Patrol data shows. During the first 10 months of the fiscal year of 2022, Border Patrol agents along the Mexican border reported more than 1.8 million apprehensions, a new record high that will likely surpass 2 million when fiscal year 2023 starts in October. These figures don't include migrants processed at points of entry along the southern border, where the Biden administration has processed some migrant groups, including Ukrainian refugees, those returned to Mexico under a discontinued Trump-era rules, and asylum seekers determined to be vulnerable. There are more unprecedented demographic shifts in border crossers as well. Before the early 2010s, the vast majority of border crossers taken to U.S. custody were from Mexico, typically men without children traveling in search of work. The trend shifted in subsequent years when migrants from Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador started journeying north in greater numbers. The number of families traveling with minors and unaccompanied children seeking asylum also increased dramatically, peaking in 2019 under former President Donald Trump. The pandemic reversed that trend, though. Single adult migrants again became the bulk of those taken into U.S. custody, comprising 64% of Border Patrol arrests in fiscal year 2021 and 71% of arrests so far in fiscal year 2022, up 35% from 2019. Another seismic demographic shift recorded under Biden is a growing share of migrants from countries outside of Mexico, Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador entering U.S. border custody. Record numbers of Cubans, Venezuelans, Nicaraguans, Colombians, Haitians, and other nationalities have been processed by U.S. Border Patrol officials in the past year and a half. While Border Patrol apprehensions involving migrants from countries beyond Mexico and Central America's Northern Triangle stood at 9% in the fiscal year of 2019, they jumped to 22% in 2021 and 40% in 2022. Remember, if they're arrested and detained, they haven't been allowed to come into the country. This is an important fact. Important fact that many people want to just overlook. We'll get to that comment, Measure. It's a good one. Now, many migrants were quickly expelled under Title 42. Since March of 2020, U.S. border agents have used a public health law known as Title 42 to quickly expel hundreds of thousands of migrants to northern Mexico or directly to their home countries without allowing them to request asylum. In fiscal year of 2021, 63%, or just over 1 million of Border Patrol apprehensions resulted in migrants being expelled under Title 42, government data shows. Nearly 50% of the 1.8 million Border Patrol arrests in the first 10 months of fiscal year 2022 turned into rapid expulsion to Mexico or migrants' home country. Decisions not to expel migrants are based on different policies, like logistical and diplomatic reasons. For example, as a policy matter, the Biden administration has not been expelling unaccompanied children, most of whom are instead housed in government shelters until they turn 18 or are placed with a sponsor in the United States. This means group homes, foster homes, family that's already over here, etc. Other migrants are not expelled because of humanitarian reasons, such as an acute medical condition, talking extreme diabetes, cancer, etc. And many border crossers are not expelled because Mexico generally only accepts the return of its citizens and Central American migrants. The US also cannot expel migrants from Cuba, Nicaragua, and Venezuela because of frosty diplomatic relations with the authoritarian governments in those countries. Existing immigration laws govern our treatment of migrants. We are required to provide food and shelter, including baby formula, for infants. Migrant adults and families who are now not expelled under Title 42 can be released with a court notice, sent to a long-term immigration and customs enforcement detention centers, or deported under regular immigration procedures, including a fast-track deportation system program known as expedited removal. Now, expedited removal is done because we simply don't have enough judges and lawyers to process people in a timely manner without just basically summarily saying, yeah, you don't deserve to be in the country, go away. We don't care what you say, just go away, out. Which is essentially what these do. The expedited removal processes generally don't favor the migrant, and it doesn't matter what story they have, whether they're an asylum seeker or what have you, they're likely not going to get in there. In fact, they're usually not even represented by a lawyer or a person, or sometimes not even provided translation services to understand fully what is happening to them. And that's pretty bad, no matter how you want to slice it. Just because they're not citizens doesn't mean they don't have rights. The Constitution has the difference between citizen rights and people rights all spattered throughout the Constitution, and we're supposed to treat these people with decency, humanely, respect, etc. And the expedited removal process is pretty much none of that. Continuing on though, while 2021 and 2022 have set records for border arrest, Border Patrol apprehensions don't equate to individual migrants. For example, one migrant who illegally crossed the border 3 times in 1 month after being expelled to Mexico twice is counted as 3 apprehensions. In fact, during the pandemic, the number of repeat crossers grown exponentially as some migrants entered the US multiple times after being returned to Mexico under Title 42. Title 42 did not come with the threat of multi-year banishment, detention, or criminal penalties, unlike formal deportation proceedings. Now that the courts have abolished Title 42, formal deportation rules apply. In fiscal year of 2022, over a quarter of all Border Patrol apprehensions have involved migrants who had been previously arrested by the agency. Border Patrol apprehensions along the southern border in 2021 and 2022 have each surpassed the 1.64 million arrests the agency recorded in 2000, a figure that stood as the record high for 2 decades. However, Border Patrol now has a significantly superior apprehension rate than it did in the early 2000s due to improved surveillance technology, more enforcement resources, and thousands of additional agents. Remember, there was a buildup of Customs and Border Patrol, the establishment of ICE, as well with the establishment of the Department of Homeland Security after 9/11. In fiscal year 2000, Border Patrol was able to apprehend 43% of all border crossers, according to government estimates, which calculate that there were likely 2.1 million successful border crossings the year in which migrants evaded apprehension. Now, the Border Patrol apprehension rate has increased dramatically over the years, reaching as high as 90% in 2019 and 66% in 2020. Whether these numbers are 100% accurate, who knows? But you're not going to say that it didn't improve dramatically. since then. As we said, technology, more enforcement, fences, perimeters, etc., all have increased the likelihood of being apprehended. Continuing on, detected and undetected unlawful border crossings that do not result in an apprehension have also plummeted, falling from over 2.1 million in 2000 to only 200,000 in 2020. There were an estimated 660,000 successful unlawful border entries that did not end in an arrest in the fiscal year of 2021, according to an unpublished Department of Homeland Security figures, which also show the apprehension rate for that year was over 70%. These figures include quote-unquote got away incidents of migrants who were detected but not arrested by Border Patrol, and estimates of undetected entries. In other words, oh, I see them, they got away. The statistics suggest that there were 2.3 million border crossings along the southern border in fiscal year 2021, the sum of Border Patrol arrests and estimates successful illegal entries. That's a smaller figure than the estimated border crossings in 2006 and prior years. In fiscal year of 2006, for example, there were likely over 2.8 million unlawful border entries. In 2000, meanwhile, there were approximately 3.7 million unlawful border crossings. The latter tally is the total border crossings in fiscal year 2022 are unlikely to surpass even with the record high levels of Border Patrol arrest. The facts do not support the allegations that Biden runs an open border country. They know this. Anybody that makes this claim knows that we don't actually have open borders. Their complaint is that anybody is able to get in at all. But they're going to harp on open borders because they really don't want immigration pretty much at all. Now, as Mezer said a little while ago, quote, I expect illegal immigration to increase indefinitely regardless of who is president. That is true, all things remaining equal. There are some aesthetic things that can tamp down on attempts to cross the border, whether or not that is, we'll say, lying by coyotes and human traffickers, saying, hey, if you cross the border now, Biden's going to give you citizenship, stuff like that, right? And what they hear in other countries is they get the same news filter that we get, right? But they have to go through a translator to get that filter, right? And so if our news media doesn't penetrate their market as much, it's more word of mouth type of situations. And so if people are like, oh, Biden's really easier on migrants, maybe it's time to go now. And so that could increase border crossings, right? But that's just an aesthetic thing. What really causes migration is the inability of people's home countries to solve their problems. And that's why when Mexico had like a resurgence in jobs and everything while Obama was president, right? Part of Bush into Obama's years, you saw net migration from Mexico actually dip negative, which means there was more people returning to Mexico than people coming in. Okay. Same thing happened partly during COVID, during the beginning of COVID. When migrants' home countries are doing better and are more stable, people are going to want to return to where they still feel like they're home. And as long as their homes aren't going well, as long as there's still political instability, you're going to see migration pushes for migration. There's pulls and pushes. I'm talking about pushes right now. Pulls are where the United States attracts migrants either through programs to like attract more doctors, nurses, tech people, having a great economy, promising people stuff, like everything like that, right? Pushes are external factors to the United States, which I was just talking about. If people really want to see migration to slow, then they should want these countries to stabilize and help them. And if they don't want to do any of that effort or whatever, regardless of what the United States does, building walls, strict enforcement, what have you, they're not going to catch everybody. It's impossible. And people will just keep trying as seen with the increase in border apprehensions, multiple apprehensions from people being expelled quickly, they're just going to keep doing it until they succeed. No, a wall is not going to solve that. Increased border patrols aren't going to solve that. Nothing is going to solve that. Nothing. And as Nikki says, we have climate. Climate change is going to increase migration flows out of South America due to harsh living conditions that will create. So yeah, these are the things that are just going to continue on, and it's important to understand what those are, how they're created, and what we can actually do to alleviate them. I seem to remember that, we have the Lady Liberty, give me your wretched, you're tired, you're poor. We're supposedly a Judeo-Christian country where you're supposed to treat the refugee and immigrant with open arms, I don't know the exact quote, but it's something along the lines of, invite them into your home as I invited you into Israel, sort of thing for people. Treat them as I treated you, sort of thing. Jesus was a refugee, right? You would think that these people would want that instead of xenophobia.